Hey guys, David from Sunday Sounds here. In today's video, we are talking about how you can find your place in the worship team from the keys position. We're gonna talk about keys riffs, placing your notes on the keyboard, how you can blend in and enhance your worship team. Joining me today for this discussion is Seth Putnam. He's a worship pastor at New Life Church out in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I've seen you do this really, really well. On your recent New Life Worship album that came out, the specific ways that you're fitting these parts into the mix. Sometimes they're standing out on top, sometimes they're sitting back and just gluing everything together. Let's dive in. You said you wanted to start off with one of the songs at the top of the record.
Yeah, I want to start off with a song called There's a Savior. This is a really fun one to play because I think it has a couple of different elements to it. It's got a few lead lines. It's got also places where you can breathe and just play block chords. And then you can start to put some delay or effects. So it's got a variety of places where you can move around. So it's an A major, so here we go. It starts on the 4 chord. So 1, 2, 3, da, 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 dun, da. Now here's the fun part. So we're using both hands. That's right there at the verse.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a big shift there from that intro part where you're filling space, open position, leaving lots of room. And then all of a sudden, you're doing this really specific rhythmic part that, if you guys listen to the recording, takes up just the right amount of space and really drives, in my opinion, that verse musically. How did that materialize as you guys were working on that song?
So Eddie Hoagland, he was the executive producer of the album. He's also on staff here at the church. He came up with a majority of the keyboard parts. So that was one of the parts that he came up with, which I just loved because it meshes well with the hammered dulcimer in the background. And we had a talk about, like, should we just single hand it? It just doesn't have the same feel until you do it like this.
Right.
And so even the way that you play it and the way that you approach it, it affects the sound. It sounds more, I think, natural and organic. So that was really fun. So that's really where that part came from, was from Eddie. Also, if you listen to the way I did the intro, I didn't fully play the guitar line or the intro line. And that's because that was also intentional too. And this is, when I talked to other keyboard players, I talked about put on your arranger's hat. Don't play the keyboard as if you have to play everything.
Right.
Actually, be an arranger, or be a producer. That's probably even a better way to say it. Go into the part thinking, what are some of the essentials that I need to play, or what are some of the things that I can play that just accent and leave room for other instruments. I think that's usually a problem I've seen when it comes to keyboard players. They feel the need that they have to fill the space with everything.
Right.
But I feel like the intro is pretty much dialed in so that you don't have to play all of the intro line, just allude to it. And you're just adding just little hints here and there.
That's awesome. I think the thing that jumps out to me there is there's sort of an implicit knowledge of who you're playing with that influences that decision of how much space to fill, where to hang back, knowing what the electric guitars are going to be doing, knowing what the other people on your team are bringing to the table. It's really collaborative.
Yeah.
Right? You've got your ideas, maybe what you would do by default, but then you're in the moment during hashing out this arrangement, you're thinking, okay, well, what is everybody bringing? How does this all come together?
Really, a good musician is one that doesn't overplay and doesn't underplay, but knows how to whittle down their parts into exactly what's needed for the moment. Because after all, it's not about you and your playing. It's about serving the congregation and serving the song.
Okay, Seth, so what would you say to somebody who's watching this video and has different volunteers coming in every week, a different electric guitarist over here who's bringing something entirely different to the table? How can a keys player, even in maybe a limited rehearsal time on Sunday morning only, develop that ear for finding, oh, here's my opportunity where I can really enhance. Here's where I need to stay out of the way.
Preparation. I think preparation is important. So once you get the set list, really dialing in on what is your sound and what is your part. But keep in mind, that's just only half of it. As soon as you get to a rehearsal, when you're with your team, when you're with your band, you're not just listening for yourself, but you're also listening around you. Surely within rehearsal, you should be having communications with your band. That's exactly what we did in our rehearsals for the album project. We were constantly practicing a song and stopping and communicating one to another of like, hey, you take that lead line and I'm just gonna stay here, or I'm gonna stay in this lower frequency while you go up higher. Communication is important. So before we even hit the stage for the service, in rehearsal, we're talking about those things.
I love that. And that takes like an overt statement that, hey, it's okay to say something. It's okay to have conversation. And if you're watching this video, your own band context has ley lines. It has built-in relationships. Maybe in your band, you might need to start by having a conversation with your worship leadership, your worship pastor, and say, hey, would it be okay if once in a while I asked the guitarist a question or made a comment to the bass player, or maybe wherever your church is at developmentally, maybe it makes sense to say to the worship leader, hey, could we do this?
Yeah.
But once you start making those asks, then it gets more normal. And you'll find that people will start coming back to you and saying, I love what you're doing. Could you double up this electric guitar riff that I just came up with that I'm really excited about?
Yeah.
But if there's none of that sort of part of your culture, if nobody said the first thing and said it to the right person with the right sort of respect for the culture of your band, then it hangs in the air as like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, the keys guy's talking to the guitarist.
Yeah, and let me just add one thing that's so good. We do have set up lines of communication. So on our team, we always make sure that there is a music director or band director. And so there is freedom for us, like for me as a keyboard player, to talk to the band director and be like, hey, is this okay? And as musicians, we need to be okay with knowing that maybe our part isn't the greatest part, or maybe our idea isn't the best idea. So what I love about our team is there's a great, strong spirit of humility that works. And you need that in order to have a collective sound.
That's so good. Okay, so can we keep walking through this song?
Sure.
It's leading to some great conversation. So you played the intro, you get that really cool part in the verse. Where does the song go next?
Okay, so after that, we go right into the chorus. 2, 3, and by the way, it's just block chords. 2, 3, he said, rejoice on you. So I'm really have spread out my hands. Super simple, right? So much I could do. I could. And you know what? In a context where it was just me and the keyboard, that probably makes sense. But in the context of a band with tracks, with lots of moving parts, it's better for me just to ride on just some whole notes and just keep it steady.
Right, and you've got that piano sound up front, and then you've got sort of a pad just chilling out underneath so that those block chords hang for those spaces. It fills that moment, but you're not stepping on everybody's toes musically, rhythmically.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of voice leading there that you're doing those right-hand octaves that just hints at some of the ends of phrases in the melody. And I know without reference for this song, we'll put a link in the description to this song so you guys can hear what the original sounds like. But those little moments of voice leading, I think, they really accentuate what the melody line is doing. They sort of add emphasis to the lyrical content there.
Right.
And it just steps out and then comes right back to home base.
Where the song goes from here, it goes into the bridge. And what I like about this song is that there's a little instrumental before we start singing the bridge. It's kind of a place for a piano line to shine. I think it's guitar and piano, but what was decided, it was like, well, let's put a dotted eighth kind of function in the lead line. So I'm going to turn on the delay here. So it'd be something like, subtle, right? Christ crucified. So it kind of plays out the melody. Again, you're thinking like an arranger or a producer. So you're adding in just a few little elements here and there that accentuate the song.
Yeah, so you're kind of hinting at where the melody is going, which in congregational worship is a great thing to do, right? Because you're setting a little bit of a stage, you're kind of hinting at the story, like foreshadowing, lyrically, melodically, where you're asking everybody in the congregation to go with the band. So you're setting the stage for that. And then once that lead vocal comes in, you're just supporting and adding in that extra little bit of texture. And the electric guitar line is sort of doubling that delayed part as well, right? So you guys are really locked in for that moment.
Totally.
How does that build up then as the bridge crescendos?
So for me, when I build, I'll typically go to more of an open hand voicing kind of deal. So now I start to do octaves. And then when I really want it to go, I'll turn off the delay and then kind of maybe quarter notes in the left and eighth notes in the right. He says, back to the chorus, and just kind of keep it in that.
So 2 things. I noticed you said when you start to really build that up, you're turning that delay back off. Is that to just free up some room for you to play rhythmically without dancing all over yourself?
Totally.
Okay.
So when you start to get really busy, when you've got some delay, some ping-ponging back and forth, it just doesn't sound that good.
Okay.
So the space is eaten up.
Yeah, so you're taking that delay out. Even though it's core to the original part, you're making a really intentional decision to pull that back because you know you're going to be putting more into the note placement itself.
Totally.
And then the other thing I noticed, out of that bridge, you're kind of going right back to home base for that final chorus. As the rest of the band is really kicking it up to 10, you are just laying that foundation and staying solid.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So the way you've broken this song down, to me there's this overarching theme of intentionality, but we've talked a lot about communication as well. And I think that one person on the team being intentional is nowhere near as powerful as a team seeking out to be more intentional together. So what would you say to a church, large, medium-sized, small, music director not, big team, small team? What's one thing that they could do after watching this video that would move them towards that sort of more intentional way of thinking about the way their keys parts integrate with their band, how that all comes together?
Yeah. Great question. I think what we need to do is have communication. Start with your worship leadership. So I would encourage anybody who's a part of a team, just maybe text your worship leader or text whoever's in charge and just say, hey, can we have a conversation about parts? I would love to show you some ideas I'm thinking about. Or even something like, hey, when we meet for rehearsal, could we just have maybe an open dialogue about how we can maybe make this arrangement a little bit different? Get that ball rolling and just get the group involved so that way you can have solidified conversations about what it could look like if everybody added to the song.
I think that really speaks to the heart of why it's worth talking about these, what might feel like granular details, right? It's because when we can bring something intentional as a worship team, I think it ends up being greater than the sum of these individual parts. This individual expression of musicianship ends up being something greater in terms of artistry expressed in gratitude and worship. And I think people in our congregations end up noticing that. They end up being enriched and encouraged by it. And then hopefully, as a church, we can respond with greater and greater worship. Seth, I really appreciate you taking the time to break down this song for us. Guys, if you haven't already checked out this album from New Life Worship, I've been listening to it on repeat, and it is awesome. Like I said, we'll put a link in the description to this specific song so you guys can check it out and see how everything Seth broke down came together in the mix. Seth, I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, man.
We'll see you guys in the next video. Seth, thanks for your time.
Absolutely.
We'll see you in the next video.